الله 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 نور السماوات والأرض. Lantern of light, evolving together.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to our respected viewers. And once again, this is your host, Sakeena Habib. Thank you so much for joining us on Lantern of Light's Mental Health Wellbeing podcast. And as always, we like to, bring in some amazing, brilliant conversations where one can feel inspired, motivated, and uplifted. And of course, with a deeper connection to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, finding that great purpose within us all. Now, true empathy starts with deep listening without judgment or the need to fix. Our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam showed us that being fully present for others is a gift. And therefore, sometimes we really need to control our emotions. We need to sometimes ponder on the psychology of our emotions and understand why are we reacting in such a way, and how can we sometimes tone it down. For example, Shahr Ramadan might be over and our fasting days may have paused, but that doesn't mean that we do not get triggered on a daily basis by some comments or thoughts or from our daily routine of the day. Let's just ask each other this question: that did you have any confrontations during Shahr Ramadan while fasting, which were quite unnecessary? Probably the way we reacted with someone and it, sort of created miscommunications or led to gaslighting issues and all of that. So if you want to know more about this, and I think we should really dive deep into this topic today and know that how can we control our emotions during Ramadan. So, inshallah, we'll be having that conversation today. We have our special guest who is joining us today. And of course, she doesn't need an introduction. She's been with us on a couple of podcasts and programs on our Lantern of Light journey. Sister Sarah Gulamhusein, who is a trauma specialist and is the founder of Sazesh as well. And, she talks about healing, about psychology, understanding emotions, and all of that. So, without much further ado, I would like to welcome Sister Sarah on board. Hello, assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, Sarah. How are you? Hope you're keeping well, inshallah.
Walaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you so much for that kind introduction. Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah, I'm well. I'm always happy to be on with Lantern of Light, subhanAllah.
Alhamdulillah. So, Sarah, today's topic is again a very good one, and I think we were actually supposed to have this conversation during Shahar Ramadan,
Yeah.
but unfortunately, because everybody's keeping really occupied and busy, and because of our tight schedules, this has been sort of postponed, and it has become a post Shahar Ramadan topic. But I feel at the same time it is a very much needed one that we need to consider and talk about. So let's kick off with psychology. Okay, psychology, like what does psychology say about emotions, and how do we identify what emotions are we feeling?
Firstly, I'm glad that you've chosen this topic because emotions are part and parcel of who we are as humans. It's our human experience to feel a particular way, to feel something called like an emotion. There are so many psychological theories about emotions, and all of them say something so different. So there's a lot of information out there. Some theories don't agree with each other. For example, there's one theory that says that we feel emotions after experiencing like a physical feeling. Like let's say you feel like shivers down your spine, or you feel scared. we're not scared, but like the physiological response first, and that leads you to feel the emotion. And then on the flip side, there are other theories that say actually no, our thoughts lead us to feel a particular way, or we're reading someone's facial expression and that's why we're feeling what we're feeling. So there's so many like contradicting theories out there, and they're all saying different things. But the one thing that they can agree on is that emotions is a way to communicate. It's a
Mm.
communication tool. So your
Right.
emotions are actually your way of communicating firstly with yourself, with your body
Right.
and your soul, how you're feeling. And then
Right.
it's a way of communicating with others when you read their emotions or when you understand their emotions. And I
Mm.
think this is really important because communication is such a big issue.
Yeah.
I
I very
mean,
I agree with this.
when
Yeah.
you come to communication, it's so hard to get it right. Sometimes you're so in your head, you don't understand what the other person's trying to say, or sometimes you're even confused about what you're thinking, or
Very.
what you should be thinking. So communication is so difficult, but emotions is such a tool that helps us understand what we're thinking, what we're feeling, and what, our body or our mind and soul is trying to tell us. And then at the same
Yes.
time, what we can apply that knowledge to our interactions with other people, what other people are thinking, feeling.
Very.
And that can really guide us. So it's really important to understand emotions.
Yes, and communication, I feel, is a key point over here that you've mentioned. A couple of us do not give it much priority and importance. Like people, just sort of dissolve it. They just say that what difference does it make? It's better to just, I mean, move on in life, be silent, rather than bringing up those emotions because it might create more chaos. But sometimes it is important to address those issues rather than suppressing them because later on, then it sort of erupts like a volcano in situations where it's not really necessary. So it's good to sort of at least touch those points, highlight those points so that one is mentally aware about their feelings or whatever they're going through. And when we talk about emotions, like is there such a thing as good emotions or bad emotions or neutral emotions?
So I get that question a lot, and that's why I wanted to kind of discuss that today. A lot of people think that there's something called a good emotion or a bad emotion. According to psychology, there's no such thing. Sometimes we label things and say like that's a positive emotion or a negative emotion, but it doesn't mean that one is good or one is bad. All emotions are trying to tell you something, and we will feel all emotions at some point in life. So if you're talking about, say, happiness and excitement, you might think that's a good emotion, but sometimes that emotion can be telling you something really different, something that maybe is not good. So it's very subjective. Sometimes you can feel angry or frustrated, but actually that emotion is trying to tell you something that will help you, or something that is going to be beneficial for you. So
Right.
you think that's a bad emotion, but actually it can lead to something good. So it's very arbitrary, I would say. I wouldn't label an emotion as good or bad. In fact, I would say that all emotions are important. All emotions should be experienced. And you really need to sit with them and try and understand what they're telling you before you can decide, you know?
Yeah.
And on that particular topic, I think a lot of people shy away from feeling certain emotions because they think it's bad. Like you think anger is bad, you think frustration or annoyance is bad, you think sadness is something that's bad. But actually, these emotions are necessary and vital for us to live as human beings. Allah has given us these emotions for a reason, and we will
Right.
experience them whether we like them or not, you know?
Right.
So labeling them as bad and stopping ourselves from experiencing them is
Yes.
not going to help us in the long run. So we need to accept that these emotions are there, we need to experience them, and they are going to tell us something. And we're ready to listen, we're ready to understand.
Very true. Now let's talk about anger and frustration, which is a
Yeah.
common sort of emotion, I think, in most of us, I believe. Of course, I will not, I mean, I will not agree if someone says I never get angry. I'm a very cool and calm and composed person. No matter how calm and composed you are, I'm sure something in your life definitely provokes you or triggers you. So, when it comes to anger and frustration, what are the best ways psychologically to deal with these emotions?
Okay, so I'm gonna answer a question I think I didn't answer before, which is identifying emotions.
Okay.
When you're feeling angry or frustrated about something, you will feel a certain way physiologically. Your body will go through some feelings. And that's how you're able to identify, okay, I'm feeling this strong emotion right now. Like for anger, you'll feel sweaty. You'll feel like your heart's starting to beat really fast. You'll kind of be like, oh my god, what's happening? You're breathing fast, you're starting to feel restless. You might notice that your hand is shaking, or your leg is, you're bumping your leg up and down a lot, or you really feel like getting up and doing something, like you're getting energy, like, oh my god, if this person doesn't stop talking, I'm going to I'm gonna
Punch.
start fighting, or I'm gonna start punching something.
Right.
so,
Yeah.
so that is just energy. At the end of the day, that's just energy that's associated with your feeling of anger. And there are many different ways of channeling that energy. Now, before I tell you how, all the ways, I want to tell you that feeling that energy is not wrong. It's not bad. It's not haram. Okay? That energy you feel for any emotion is normal. It's a natural response to that particular emotion. So you are
Right.
allowed to feel that way. But what you do with that energy, that can be a bit complicated. That is when we can go from halal to haram really fast.
I
So
see.
you really need to think about, how are you channeling that energy? If you're using that anger to scream, lash out, hit people, just harm another person or even harm yourself,
Yeah.
that's haram. You're not allowed to do that in Islam. Islam does not allow you ever to harm yourself or another person. But if you're
Right.
using that energy and channeling it in different ways, now that's okay. So for example, I would say the some of the best ways that I've learned from myself and also from my clients in dealing with anger is, one, getting out of that place, getting out of that situation, right? Where
Yeah,
you're,
because it gets pretty heated up, right? They say
yeah,
if the kitchen gets heated up and you can't tolerate any more opinions, you should just get out of the heated kitchen, right?
yep, just get out, just excuse yourself, say, I
Yeah.
need a breather right now. I'm not okay. I need to go. And that's
Yes.
okay. We're allowed to do that. So take a breather, go for a walk, go for a jog, go to the terrace, go somewhere where you feel safe, um,
Yeah.
or go to the gym, anywhere that you're able to really physically take out, this energy that you're feeling.
Right.
Gymming, boxing, I would say. If you have, like, I strongly recommend boxing, or if you have like a punching bag at home or something
Yeah.
like that, go there.
Interesting.
Yeah, just take it out, make sure, again, you're not allowed to harm yourself. So make sure you have
Yeah.
the equipment, make sure you have the gloves, or you've covered your arms in some way, your hands, so you're not hurting yourself. But yeah,
Yeah.
go physically take it out. If you have a swimming pool, go and swim, do a couple of laps, you know. If these things are
Yes.
accessible to you, then go ahead and do them. Now, for some people, these things are not accessible. You can't go to the gym. Maybe it's the middle of the night. You can't go, and get a swim. You don't have a punching bag. So there are a couple of other things you can do. You can go into your room, grab a pillow, and scream into the pillow, right?
Wow.
That really, really helps because you're not hurting anyone. It's a pillow, so it's not going to hurt you. And, you're just taking out that frustration. Like, just jump on your bed, just like, scream into that pillow until you feel like you're calming down.
Yeah.
I would say, if you're not the type of person to scream or lash out like that, again, that's absolutely fine. Take what I strongly recommend is, like, take a bag or something and start breathing into that bag. Um,
Oh,
that really helps. It also really helps when you're going through an anxiety attack to kind of calm you down. So
okay.
deep breathing into a bag, even breathing on your own, if you're able to sustain that deep, slow breathing, just try and do that until your heart rate calms down. Um, I
These are
would,
some good tips, actually. I mean, funny, like how some people would take these techniques like in a humorous way, or they would think that something is wrong with this person. Like, do you get me what I'm saying?
Yeah, they're
No.
very
Yeah.
conventional, but
Yes.
I found that they really, really help, you
But
know?
they are helpful, exactly the way you've said it. If someone has anxiety or whatever, like for example, I know that if someone would find me doing this at home, like screaming into my pillow, they think something is wrong with this girl.
Yeah.
She's not okay in the head, right?
Gone crazy. What is wrong with her?
Yeah, something's
Um,
wrong. But
and you know what?
sometimes
You never know what's gonna work. So I'm giving all these
exactly, yeah,
examples, but try it out. Try it out for yourself and see what works for you. I
yeah,
know one
absolutely.
client who tried all of these and none of them worked for them. They said, none
No
of these
way.
are working for me. What do I do? This, I'm not feeling better. I was like, okay, let's try. It was not in their personality to do something like that. Like they really felt like worse
Wow.
after, you know, which is also normal because everybody is
Mm,
different and different things work for
yeah,
different people. So I suggested, okay, what are things you like to do? Like what are some of your hobbies? And we found out that one of their hobbies was painting. So it's like, okay,
yeah.
when
Oh,
you're feeling
yes.
angry, try to do some deep breathing and then set up your painting station, like go and paint and see
Exactly.
if that helps you calm down from your anger. And actually, it worked like a charm.
Word like a charm.
Absolute miracle. And
Yeah,
actually,
this one is a beautiful one. A
yeah.
painting
So
therapy.
being creative as well can help you deal with like anger and frustration. It just
Yeah.
depends what works for you.
I think now that you've mentioned about painting, like I'm recalling as a teenager, we all go through a lot of things during our teenage years. And of course, mine wasn't also a bed of roses. I had my own challenges. So I remember painting used to be my therapy. And that's where I got a really good hands on into the world of art and imagination. And I discovered that I could actually paint so well and draw and everything, like sketches and figures and all of that.
Wow.
So it was like a whole different world for me. I remember, like, it felt like I'm secluding myself in a very quiet zone, in my own comfort zone. The noises used to like get suppressed around me, so many noises in my head. So that really used to relax me a lot. So I definitely would say yes, painting definitely helps. Yes, yes,
So for
absolutely.
you, that was kind of like you identified that as your safe place. And that's
Yes.
another thing that's really important. A lot of people go through the whole of their life not understanding if they have a safe space or not. So I would
Oh,
say that's the first thing you should do is sit down and reflect. What are your safe spaces? It doesn't have to be a physical space. It can be a physical space, but for some people like yourself, it's a mental space. When you're
yeah.
painting, that's your space to be safe, you know, and
Yes.
it's really important to know what makes you feel safe so that when you're going through a hard time, when you're going through those, you know, difficult emotions and you don't know what to do, you can go to that safe space and like kind of help yourself and calm down and feel okay again. Yeah.
Right, right. Sarah, tell me, why is it so difficult for us humans to, understand emotions, like our emotions? Like, why do you think as humans we find emotions so difficult to understand and deal with?
So there's so many different things, you know, we live in a society where everyone is opinionated, everyone has, a way of seeing things. And then at the same time, we also live in a society that is so easy to say, this is right, this is wrong. Like the amount of times I've heard people saying um, to their children, you're not allowed to be angry. Don't be angry. I'm going to punish you or I'm going to give you a timeout if you're angry. And you know, the first thing I say to that is, that's not true. And that's not even Islamic. You know, Allah has given us these emotions, like I said earlier, for a reason. We are allowed to feel them. It's how we deal with them. That's what, you know, where it becomes a bit tricky. And we need to understand what is the best way of dealing with these emotions. But not like restricting people from even feeling that emotion, that's not healthy at all. So
Definitely.
and it's a difficult thing because sometimes in when we feel these emotions we tend to lash out in ways that we don't even realize, you know, or you don't You don't understand the extent of it until after everything is said and done. Again, which is a very natural human response, you know?
Yeah.
Sometimes you can suppress yourself so much and hide parts of yourself so much that when you get angry, everything comes bursting out like a volcano, you know?
Yeah.
And again, that's also not a healthy way of dealing. Suppressing that emotion,
Dealing.
keeping it inside, it's gonna come out. It's gonna come out
It's
because
gonna
it's
come on.
energy. And energy,
Right.
I don't know if anyone has done, if you've done physics or not, but the law of physics, there's one law of physics that states energy cannot be created or destroyed. It is only transferred from one form to another. And
Mm.
so that energy that you're holding in, you're just adding to it. It's not gonna be destroyed. It's not gonna
Right.
like hide magically, right? It's
Yeah.
gonna stay there until one day it can all come out. And
Very true.
you need to be able to understand this is energy that I'm, putting in a space that cannot hold that energy. And I need to do something about it before it does something to me, or to the people that I love and care about.
Yeah.
So societal expectations and your upbringing, and there's so many different reasons why we struggle with emotions, why we feel that actually on the flip side as well, there are some ways of upbringing, and there are some societal expectations that encourage you to be angry, that encourage you to show that anger or show that discipline, and like punish people. So that's also a reality for some people. And I would say that if you notice yourself going too much on this side where you're suppressing emotions, or too much on that side where you're over showing these emotions or over relying on them for communication, then I would say come to the middle, which is what Islam
Yeah.
says. Use the middle ground. Come to the middle ground and try to make sure you're not going to any extreme, because neither of those are going to help you communicate. Neither of those are going to help you manage emotions.
Absolutely. Very beautifully mentioned, Sarah. Very beautifully explained. And of course, you connected it with physics as well. Like, how energy is transferred, right? It's never created, can never be created or destroyed. So
Yeah.
we should really, that energy that stays within us needs to be vented off. It needs space. We need a breather, all of us sometimes. So it's very important to let that out. Okay, let's talk about some effective techniques. Okay, so as I had mentioned in the beginning, like during the month of Shahar Ramadan, most of us experience that phase of fasting, and it can really take a toll on us. Of course, it's not easy, especially for women. I believe it gets even more challenging because we've got our house, routines, we've got our families, we've got our children, and especially when I see young mothers with their dealing with 2 3 children at home, I don't know how they do it, but like it's very difficult, keeping them entertained, and then you're fasting at the same time, your energy level really drops as well. So what are some effective techniques to regulate emotions during fasting, or even on regular days or extremely busy days?
That's a very good question. And definitely we struggle more during Ramadan because we're not eating. We're not, I sometimes say that a lot of the times when people get angry, it's either because you're not sleeping well or you're not eating well. If you rectify your sleep schedule and your food schedule, you're not gonna get angry that often. It's just because, like I said, it's a way of your body communicating with you, right? And actually, I found that to be so true because even when I'm feeling annoyed sometimes, it's because I missed a meal, I didn't have time to eat, or I slept late, because
Yeah,
I was working. So, because of those reasons, I get annoyed the next day. And
yeah,
it's good to be self aware about that, because then you realize, okay, I didn't listen to my body's needs. That's why I'm feeling this way. That's why my body's trying to tell me, why didn't you give me food? Why didn't you give me rest? Right?
yeah,
And in Ramadan, that's where we're challenged the most. We don't get
yeah,
enough sleep because we're staying up at odd hours of the night.
yeah,
We don't get
exactly.
enough food. We don't get enough food during the day. So we are going to struggle.
Yeah,
And I would say, building on one of my previous answers, is first, know what to do when that emotion gets too much for you. So when that
right.
anger and frustration gets too much for you, take a breather and go do one of those things I mentioned earlier. Go to your safe place and try to really manage that emotion in that moment, because you need to
Right.
calm down in that moment. And then after that, give yourself some time just to recuperate, to bring back your energy. Usually after you've eaten something or you've broken your fast, then give yourself at least 30 to 40 minutes just to reflect, just to sit and think about that emotion. Try to think about what happened, try to process that situation, try to remember what was said, what did you say, what did they say, really, I would say really analyze what happened and then reflect on it. How did you feel? What particular was it that made you angry? Was it, something they said, something you said? Is it based on a past memory, or did it remind you of something? There's so many things that can trigger us and we don't even know what they are. So
Right.
reflect on that. What was it in particular? And then finally, reflect on your response. Did you like your response? Did you not like your response? What was it about that response that didn't sit well with you? And what can you do to change it? How can you make it right for yourself, but also for the other person, right?
Right.
So reflection is really, really important. And then after that, I would say, if you notice this becoming a pattern, so if this is not a one-time thing, it's happening over and over again, then you need some help. You need to talk to someone about it who's an expert. So go and talk to a therapist, try to get a session booked in and just explore that emotion. Maybe you don't feel comfortable sitting with that emotion. So that sitting with that anger, feeling those things makes you feel really scared. Like, why is my heart beating? Why am I getting palpitations? Why am I sweating? For some people it can be very physical, and they don't
Physical.
like that physical response. And there are reasons for that as well. So that's understandable. But you need to understand, okay, why don't I like this response? Why can't I sit with this feeling? What's happening when I'm getting angry? What is going through my mind? Am I scared of something? Am I scared of myself? Am I scared of the other person? You know, Things like that. So sometimes you need to go to therapy to really understand yourself better and why you're dealing with that emotion. And then finally, I would say you're not alone. You're never alone. As you said, we all experience anger, we all
Yeah.
struggle with it. So find someone you trust and talk to them. Talk to them and tell them, this is what I'm going through and I'm stuck. I don't know what to do. I don't
Mm.
want to do this, but I don't know
Yeah.
what to do.
That's
And
true.
you'll be surprised, but that person you're talking to will probably be able to help you. They'll probably say,
Yeah.
I've been in that situation and I can help you. Right? Or they'll tell you, I haven't been in that situation, but I'm here for you. Let's figure it out together.
Yeah.
you know and that's an important thing I also wanted to mention is, how do you support someone who tells you this? If you're the kind of person who'll say, no, don't get angry, no, this is not right, then you're not really supporting anyone. That is not supportive at all, and you should just keep quiet. Okay?
Good one.
Honestly, because
I know, right?
if you
It
don't have
gets very, I
constructive,
find such people very annoying.
yeah, if you don't have anything constructive to say, or if you don't know what to say, just keep
Yeah.
quiet. Sometimes
Right.
silence is your best friend, right?
Very true. Very
But if
true.
you do think of something to say, you should think about something on the lines of, why do you think this happened, if you don't mind sharing, or how did you feel, or what made you uncomfortable about it? Those are kind of good questions that can help the other person really think. And then you can
Very
also reassure them. Reassurance is so important. Like, okay, I don't know, what you need right now, but I'm here
true.
for
Yeah.
you. Let
For
me
you.
know. You can lean on me. You know,
Very,
if you ever need to vent, just call me. Things like that are so supportive and so helpful. So really think about how you're supporting this person who is coming to trust you with these things.
very true. Absolutely. Sometimes it can get really irritating and annoying when such people think that, they know what they're doing and they're doing the right thing. But actually, it's such a put off,
Yeah.
that they're not understanding what we're going through at that point. And I think it's just best to, shut it and not say much, because I feel like it triggers your emotions more. You
Yeah.
feel
Yeah.
provoked, right? Rather, you know
Because you feel like, okay, I'm trusting this person and
Yeah,
they're disregarding or invalidating what I'm trying to say, right?
exactly.
And actually one thing, you raise a really good point, because when you don't understand what the other person's going through, or you're not sure, sometimes you can feel that pressure that, oh, they're coming to me, so I should help them, I should have all the answers. But no, you don't need to have all the answers. If you don't
Yes,
have the right thing to say, that's okay. You're a human being.
yes,
They're not
yes.
coming to you because you have all the answers. They're coming to you because they need support, they need reassurance, they need love, right?
Yeah,
Why
yeah,
people that's why people trust others, because they need that connection. So you
right.
don't have to have the right thing to say, and don't put that pressure on yourself, because if you say the wrong thing, you're actually doing them a disservice.
Very true. Right. Okay, now this is the most interesting question for today. This is the
Right.
banger question, right?
Yeah.
That it has been quite often noticed that during the period of fasting, a lot of miscommunications tend to form, especially on text messages, right? So nowadays, of course, we're living in that social media era, and when we talk to people on WhatsApp, it's like you can read people's tones, right? Now, actually, the tones can sound different because this is what you're imagining in your head, and the person who's texting you probably means something else, but now
Mm,
you're creating stories, and sometimes this leads to gaslighting and emotional blackmailing as well. Even when you're in your office, in your work areas during the month of Ramadan, because of that fasting and everything, sometimes maybe someone will comment and it didn't really hit well, and someone will just react. Okay,
yeah.
so what is your say in this?
I would say it's a very valid thing, and it happens so often. And I can tell from what you're saying there's a story there, but we'll talk about that later. um there's it's very common, it happens a
Yeah,
lot. And a lot of the times it's just miscommunication. Like you said, you're reading the tone wrong, or you're putting your own assumptions there. And we all do that. I do that as well. We all do that. No matter, it's a human thing to fill in the gaps with your brain,
exactly. Yeah.
we just want to know all the information all the time. um
Yeah.
and I do want to say that when you're going through something like that, you have two choices as a human being. You can either, okay, well, we'll go at it from both perspectives. If it's happening to you, you can
Yeah.
either assume that this person is going out of their way to
Mm.
gaslight you, to emotionally manipulate you, or you can choose to ignore it. Okay?
Yeah.
I would say go with your gut instinct. Your gut
Right.
will tell you what is going on here. And
Yeah.
then do some investigative work.
Yeah.
As human beings, we have so many resources available to us. Do some investigative work. Ask the really, hard hitting questions. But also make sure that you're respectful at all times, because, again, we don't want to harm ourselves or other people, right?
Right.
Teach yourself to be in that uncomfortable situation and to deal with that discomfort so you can have a peaceful conversation, because
Yeah.
that is how you deal with conflict, and that is how you are resilient. You build your resilience by doing that, by sitting in situations or in feelings that are not good, that you
Mm.
don't like. Okay, so
Yeah.
that's the first thing. The second thing, if you're the one on the other, and if you're the one who is gaslighting or emotionally manipulating the other person, it's so easy to say don't do that, but notice something about yourself. If you tend to do that in conversations, if you tend to gaslight other people or to discredit what they're saying or to change their narrative so that you can feel better, sit with them.
Yeah.
Try to understand, why are you doing that? What are you getting from doing something like that? Because you're definitely getting something. You've made a decision to do that. Whether
Right.
consciously or unconsciously, you are doing that for a reason. So try to understand what that reason is and what that says. What is that trying to tell you about yourself? A lot of the
Of-
time, people do that because they're not feeling safe, or they're not feeling heard in that conversation, or they feel like they need to change the facts of the situation to make themselves feel better, right? Because they're not feeling better and their emotions are the most important. So there's so many different reasons why you can put yourself in that situation or why you do that. And I would say sit with that and try to understand that, and talk to someone as well, a professional if you need to, because it's important to know why you consistently do something like that and what you can do instead, because it's not right to harm other people, and
Right.
through doing that, through gaslighting others, you're also harming yourself,
Very
because
true.
you're changing the narrative in your mind, you're confusing your brain, and in
Mm.
the long run that's actually led to really poor outcomes when it comes to your mental processes. Like, it can affect your memory, it can affect your decision making, it can affect so many things in the long run. It can affect your mood as well, because you're confusing your brain, you're changing the facts, you're trying to
Right.
tell your brain, your mind was there when this thing was happening, but then you change everything in your brain, and then you're trying to tell your brain, no, that didn't really happen, even though it did. And then you change the story and you try to convince the other person you've changed the story based on what your brain is saying,
Very
right?
true.
So it's
Right.
it's, it's a very toxic cycle. It's a very
Cycle.
dangerous cycle. And I would
Yeah.
say that you need to be able to be aware that you're doing that, and you need to be aware of why you're doing it, what you're getting out of it, and how to maybe deal with that situation in a different way, that'll still make you feel safe, but it's a better way to deal with it. So I would say from both sides, you have to really do something. You can't,
Yeah, you have to.
don't just rely on, we're gonna argue, I'm gonna cut this person off, we're not gonna talk again, I'm gonna go and gossip about them. That cycle is so unhealthy.
So
So
unhealthy.
don't do that. Try to break the cycle
Yes.
and do something that's going to help you in the long run.
Yeah, very, very well explained. Very good. Just to add a point about, you said, how we tend to often gossip about people, backbiting. I was watching this Islamic clip today,
Mhm.
and it really touched my soul. So they said that, when we backbite about someone, we are actually asking God that, please make me the first one to enter the hellfire. And even after repenting to God, that, sorry God, I gossiped about someone, I backbited, again, that doesn't really bring in a great difference, because now you will be the last person to enter paradise even
Yeah.
after repenting. So you see, like, it's a beautiful message out here that, it is something really bad which we should avoid, because there is no benefit or fido over here, in any way, right? So it's better to avoid backbiting as much as possible. And as you said, that these are some of the small things that, lead us to, backbiting, gossiping, gaslighting, emotional blackmailing, blah blah blah, whatever, all these things, right? They're all from the same evil root. So we need
Yeah,
to really stop ourselves and, self control ourselves, put ourselves in that other person's shoe. That, what if I was in that person's place? How would I feel, right?
absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I actually wanted to add to that because Islam is such a beautiful religion. It really tells us, what we shouldn't be doing. There are some people who, okay, they'll backbite, but there are other people who will backbite and add their own mirchi masala. They'll add this and that and the other to really convince you that that person is bad. Okay.
Right.
And I want to say that is a trauma response. That is a
Hmm.
psychologically traumatic response. So if you've grown up, let's say, or you as a kind of person who no one believed in you, whenever you said something, they thought you were lying, they always doubted you. If you grew up in that kind of environment, one of the ways to cope with that as a child is you start adding stuff, right? You start lying, you start adding all these dramatic things, and packaging a story so that that person can believe you.
Yeah.
And so those kind of people who are tempted to add to the story, to make it sound so bigger than it is, you really have to think about, okay, why am I doing this? Because it
Right.
could be that I was traumatized in the past. People didn't believe me, they didn't listen to me. I never felt heard. So I needed to go the extra mile to be heard. And sometimes
Mm,
it meant doing something wrong, like lying or adding mirchi masala, or, trying to justify myself over and over again until that person believes me without a shadow of doubt. So that's a trauma response. And I say that tells you something about yourself. So if you're
sure.
the person doing that, sit with that and try to understand where it comes from. And then work on healing yourself, because you can heal. We can all heal.
Absolutely. A beautiful message. Wow, that was a wonderful conversation. And we are, so Alhamdulillah, I think it's time to wrap up now.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Sarah, for sharing, some brilliant points. I always enjoy conversing with you because, we really like bringing, the raw, practical aspects from within our lives and everything that one goes through, whatever is being experienced within our communities and societies. It's so important to talk about, address these issues.
Yeah.
So thank you so much, Sarah, for your time. Yeah.
Anytime.
So I would like to thank all our viewers for tuning today and for being a part of our program today. And of course, please make sure to like today's program, give us a thumbs up, share in some comments, and also make sure to hit the subscribe button to our YouTube channel page. And inshallah, we'll be bringing more conversations as these to you. Inshallah, thank you so much. Looking forward to hearing from each one of you. And this is your host, Sakeena Habib, signing off. Jazakumullahu khairan. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.